Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cesar Palma Rodriguez, and I'll be examining the links between the outbreak of an infectious agent and its impact on travel and tourism. If we can reference the abstract slide in my slideshow, where I introduce my research and I introduce the travel and tourism industry. And I will begin by saying that according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, the WTTC, travel and tourism as an industry accounted for $8.8 trillion in economic output, supporting 319 million jobs in 2019 alone. I feel that it is important to note that the industry also accounts for 10% of global employment and as well as 10.4% of global gross domestic product, the GDP. The industry's success seems to be uncompromised and nearly uninterrupted up until the outbreak of an infectious disease, when travel and tourism dramatically decreases. I made the choice to delve into the links between an outbreak of an infectious disease and travel and tourism because of the sheer relevance. And I make the note that the present COVID-19 pandemic, present COVID-19 outbreak is the 21st century's pandemic. Through my research, I've kind of noticed that every century has its own pandemic, which sort of restructures and reshapes industries in the world, and leading industries seem to begin to have to shift into the next step. So what I want to aim to look into, which is the essential part of my research, would be the driving forces behind travel during the pandemic, as it pertains to why people are traveling during a pandemic, sort of their driving forces, and the reasons/rationale behind traveling during this pandemic, which I'm looking to find potential implications as it pertains to not only the driving forces behind why people are traveling, but also the future of the travel and tourism industry and upcoming trends to look out for in the industry. Through my research, I am able to compare COVID-19 to preceding outbreaks, such as that of the dengue fever outbreak, H7N9, SARS, Ebola, and both the seasonal and pandemic influenza. My research revolves and surrounds itself with the question: how does the outbreak of an infectious agent impact and influence the decision to travel? I use 3 studies in my literature review: tourism and the health effects of infectious diseases, and current issues in tourism diseases transformation as a potential risk for travelers, seem to be an extension study of each other, because Ahmad R. Abatat and David McBaker each cross-reference each other in each of their scholarly articles, while A. Mao, Si-Chu, Jae-woo, and Lu-Kyu seem to center themselves around the SARS and H7N9 outbreaks in China, in their scholarly article, The Impacts on Health, Society, and Economy of SARS and H7N9 Outbreaks in China, a Case Comparison Study. I made the mention that I saw some commonalities, and I made the mention that I believe that several of these journals are extension studies, but the main part and the main important part of each of them is how the outbreak influences the decision to travel and the socioeconomic impacts that it has on its respective nations, that each of the scholarly article covers and references. And oddly enough, each each scholarly article comes to the conclusion that it is in underdeveloped nations where we see that the outbreak of a disease is more of a hub or of a center of an outbreak. And I make the mention in this is that I find this to be a paradox. And the paradox through it is that it seems to be that COVID-19 has made its way into better developed regions of the world, where we are in fact seeing soaring numbers of infected patients. Major and urban cities in developed regions of the world have become the epicenter of the pandemic, which is and which has not been the case in its preceding outbreaks. Through my research, I plan on holding a qualitative, structured questionnaire where volunteers willing to fill out a survey at an international airport will be given the opportunity to fill out a questionnaire that is structured. And in addition, I will host continuous observations in the potential location of the John F. Kennedy International Airport. While I believe that my research is explanatory and predictive and descriptive in nature, I do believe it is also an extension study, and included in my presentation I have an example of my questionnaire. And lastly, just some possible implications that my research can uncover as it pertains to the future of the industry. What I am getting from all of this is that industry leaders are beginning to emerge as emergency responders, prepared with emergency measures to be put into place. There's now a larger presence and emergence of virtual travel because the industry is forced to evolve. And as it pertains to the factors that influence travel during an outbreak, my research aims to answer what precautions are people taking, if any, and what is truly driving people to travel during a pandemic, whether it be for business, leisure, religion, education, family, or medical purposes. That essentially is the true nature of the research that I am trying to host. And lastly, my references are at my last slide. Thank you very much.